Welcome to our live webcast, The World of Virtual Clinical Trials, Entering a New Era of Design, Conduct, Monitoring, and Analysis. Thank you for joining us. My name is Eric, and I will be the operator for the presentation today. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to acquaint you with a few features of this web event technology. At any time, you may adjust your audio using any computer volume settings that you may have. On the right-hand side of your screen, you will see the text chat window. There is a large window which holds all of your sent messages and a smaller text box at the bottom where you will type in your questions. To send a question, click in the text box and type your text. When finished, click the send button. All questions that you submit are only seen by today's presenters. Your questions will be responded to in the order in which they were received and will be addressed at the end of the presentation. You will also be able to ask questions via telephone at the end of the presentation. At the conclusion of today's program, we ask that you complete a brief post-event survey. Please take a moment to complete the survey as it will help SCDM plan future web events. At this time, I would like to turn the microphone over to our moderator, Kripesh Krishnan, for opening remarks.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I hope you and your family are safe and doing well. I'm Kripesh, one of the co-chairs for today's event. On behalf of SCDM Board of Trustees, India Steering Committee, and my fellow co-chairs, Nagalakshmi Shetty and Deepu Joseph, I extend a warm welcome to the SCDM India Virtual Single Day Event 10th edition. Very excited to be part of this mega virtual event. We have a packed and an engaging agenda lined up for today, and I'm sure you all will have a great time. So up next, I'll hand over to two key leaders to take this forward. Mayank Anand, Head Global Data Management, Service Delivery DMS, and member of SCDM Board of Trustees, and Shobhit Kshatriya, VP, Life Sciences, R&D Operations, Accenture, and SCDM India Steering Committee Chairperson. So over to you, Mayank and Shobhit.
So good morning, India. Good morning, everyone in the globe. Thank you, everyone, for joining early on a Saturday, which is not a great thing to call, but I'm sure this is the new normal. And what we are going to witness today is one of the new normal which is happening across the world. And that's why we all are virtually connected today. So I welcome everyone for today's event. Thanks to all the co-chairs, steering committee members, and all the speakers and presenters for this call. Moving quickly, because I had already wasted 3 minutes, so I'll go to the slides. I'm going to introduce you to SCDM, and generally, whenever we have these events, we start with a statement that how many of you are attending this event for the first time. And as I'm still seeing there are around 203 people who have joined and the number is increasing, I'm expecting around 1,000 people. And as per our intel, more than 80% people are going to join this event for the first time. So welcome to SCDM, welcome to the world of SCDM. So what we are, basically, that's very important to understand and connect yourself with. SCDM is a non-profit professional organization serving clinical data management and research professionals, and it is headquarters in US, and we have teams across the world. And this year, what we did was we realigned ourselves with the moving dynamics of the industry, and our vision statement changed actually. We are leading innovative clinical data science to advance global health research and development. So you see that our inclination towards data science is not just because industry is moving, it's because that's the need of the hour. And our mission is to connect and inspire professionals managing global health data with global education, certification, and advocacy. So we are going to be very strongly working towards these vision and mission in coming years. Our board is very much committed towards it, and each and every member very much aligned with this. And this is the new normal which is helping us to move towards this direction, because data is going to play a very vital role in coming days. What is our 3-year strategic map? This is very important. Serving on the board, we all have aligned ourselves to these strategic goals, where we are going to focus on thought leadership, education, and advocacy. And we are going to make sure that all our events, our execution of activities are very much aligned to these three, whether it is related to GCDMP, the white papers which we are publishing, certification, We are also working towards making our data basics as more science journal in future. We already have Meredith working on that. So these things will help us to drive towards these three key strategic points which we are focusing in next 3 years. Numbers are always my favorite, and I think so it makes sense to see the numbers because these are the metrics which tells you that how much hard work is put behind to make sure that these things are moving in the right direction. We have 4 SCDM offices. We have 24 members over 60 countries, 504 CCDMs, which is very important to know because I think so you all got connected with SCDM because CCDM certification was happening across the world. We have more than 800 learners attending SCDM online education every year. Our last conference in Seattle, which was face-to-face conference, witnessed 876 participants across the world. Not to say that our India conference was never less, because last year, December, we witnessed the highest participation for India conference, which was 450 participants. And today we are sitting on a single day event with 1,000 plus people. Now that's the magic we have done. We have done 12 webinars, 11 online courses. We had 76 people participating in our leadership forum in the annual conference. And for the China conference, we got 215 participants. And what you are seeing on this slide is very important to mention that SCDM is just not focused in US or Europe. It's expanding across the globe. India, China, Japan, Europe, Latin America are all classic examples where SCDM is connecting with industry, connecting with people, and giving an opportunity to come together. Coming to the Board of Trustees, this is Board of Trustees 2020. And if you see at the top layer, we have the Executive Committee, which is actually executed from the Board of Trustees. We have Mikhail, who's the chair of the Steering Committee for 2020. Sanjay Bharadwaj, who's Vice Chair. Linda King is past chair. Jennifer is secretary, and Jonathan is treasurer. We have trustees, Reza, Deepak, myself, Maria, Amy, Richard, and Peter. We also have 3 advisors with us, Carrie, Meredith, and Patrick. You all would have seen the white paper which got recently published for the Innovation Committee by Patrick. So it was a great addition to our thought leadership. Let's look into the committee overviews. These are some of the committees and task force which we are looking forward for each one of you to participate actually. We have a membership committee, education, content, certification, GCDMP, academic, annual conference, innovation, and e-source implementation. And all these committees basically are very easily available for you to join. You don't need to be a leader, frankly speaking. If you are part of the industry, you can be part of these committees. Board of Trustees, Executives, Finance, Nominating, and Steering Committee, China, India, EMA, and Japan. Moving to our membership, and I think so one thing we have to definitely mention on this slide, the membership fee for India is reduced, it's just $40. And I think so we all should be spending that much money for a year to become a member of SCDM and take benefit what comes your way. And this is very important because this shows that how much committed board is towards India as a geography. DCDMP is one of our key documents which we have been publishing. I know there were certain delays in past, but we are back on track. We had already released for revisions. We have asked your view and opinion. So please make sure that you continue contributing towards this. You have the opportunity to become a volunteer. We have a lot of people from India who are already participating in giving input for GCDMP. Please connect. If you have not done, please at least review, because this is going to set the trend for the future. Coming to CCDM certification, I'm very proud to say we are the second largest in the world to have the CCDM certified people. People value this certification altogether, and there are a lot of organizations who are looking towards it where they can get people who are CCDM certified. So please take on these exams. We also have started with the beta exam, which will come to your way. And this is very important because you can now give exams from anywhere you want. So you don't have to go to a biometric center. So we are conducting exams from wherever you want, and Meredith and Deepak Kalubundi is there who are heading it, and they're running it successfully. So we like to see more and more CCDM certified people from India. Coming to SCDM University, there were a lot of online education courses started. I know there were certain feedbacks we got about the webinars, that in India, the webinars cannot be affordable for the high pricing. So we are going to come up with India webinars, which will be very much in pockets of everyone to attend it. We are making sure that India leadership and global leadership is combining together to do webinars, and something which we can offer you as learning moving forward. The next slide is for Shobit. Shobit, over to you for the volunteers.
Thanks, Mayank. So as Mayank was explaining, volunteership is one of the most important things which we can do towards contribution to SCDM. So if I look at how I can volunteer, right, there are several opportunities. There's so many committees like innovation, marketing, membership, content alignment, webinars, online courses for publication, for resource, for GCDMP. There's so many opportunities for us. Very simple way to just get enrolled, right? You just log on to community.scdm.org, just enter your profile, and once you upload your volunteer profile, if there are open opportunities, you can select for it, opt for it. If the opportunities are not open, your profile gets into the volunteer pool, and as and when the opportunity arises based on your interest, you will continue to receive emailers from SCDM, right? And at that point of time, you can opt in for becoming a volunteer as per your interest. So please come forward, please come and participate. And today we really feel that each one of you as a participant also on the call is a volunteer, right? So it doesn't take much. Come forward and participate and join us. And back to you.
Thank you. So this is an overview of the committees and task force. I had already in the previous slide, I referred about it, but again, I want to emphasize that you have so many committees and task force and so many ways to connect with us. There is not just one way to become an attendee or just one way to be part of the executive committee or a board, but there are multiple opportunities which you can opt for. These slides will be available to everyone. Please go through this and make sure that you contribute to it. The society is formed by people like us, and it will continue running by people like us. So for anything, you can write to info@scdm.org. So I'm done with this. Over to you, Nagalakshmi.
Yeah, so
sure,
thank you so much. I will take over for a few moments.
Okay.
And get into the agenda. But Nagalakshmi, yes, over to you for moving forward.
So we're just checking. You want me to take over now, right?
Yeah, so we will switch over to the agenda. So
okay.
I'll hand over to you in a minute once we are through the agenda.
Sure.
Okay, so once again, welcome to the event on behalf of the entire SCDM India committee. As we were talking about a few minutes back, right, this is the 10th edition of our single day event and first ever virtual event. And guess what? We have 1,000+ of you who registered for the event. So welcome, and I'm sure you will enjoy through the day. Before we proceed to the agenda, one quick thing which I would like to cover is our co-chairs, right? You have heard Kripesh and Nagalakshmi in the morning, but I would like to do a formal introduction for the three co-chairs. So Nagalakshmi is a vice president and India country head at PRA Health Sciences, and she comes with nearly 20 years of experience in areas of operations management, team setup, business performance management, strategic management, process design, and multiple other automation projects that she has been leading. At PRA, she has the responsibility of leading the build-out of the Bangalore office and supporting the needs of the PRA's various businesses across the globe. Our second co-chair is Kripesh Krishnan, who is the Journal Manager and Service Delivery Lead at Accenture. He comes with 16 years of experience in pharma and clinical industry, which includes over 14 years in clinical data management. He's a pharmacist by training and a Six Sigma Green Belt. In his current role at Accenture as a site lead for Hyderabad, he is responsible for running the delivery and operations and managing the clients on a day-to-day basis. Last but not the least, our co-chair, Deepu Joseph, who is the Vice President and Global Head of Data Management at Quanticate, comes with 15 years of experience in clinical data management, working with large and smaller CROs, and he has led various sizes of the team within data management globally to deliver various therapeutic areas and phases of clinical trials for the global top 10 biopharma. So with that, I would switch over to the agenda for the conference. If we can get up the agenda slide, please. A quick walk through the agenda. We start the day now with the three keynotes. The first keynote being Craig, and Nagalakshmi will soon introduce Craig. And Craig is the former head of innovation at Pfizer, followed by the second keynote, which is by Kent, and he's EVP and Chief Scientific Officer at PRA Health Sciences, and then followed by the third keynote by Mike, who is Michael Tucker. He's a Senior Health Product Specialist at Medidata. Post the three keynotes, we will get into a panel discussion. The panel discussion is moderated by me. So very interesting topic, which is very relevant for the day. And that topic will really help us understand how, as we move to the decentralized clinical trial in this era, we are able to make a good inroads into patient centricity. We will then have a break, we will have our another speaker, Seelan Jayaraj from Oracle, Senior Director for Oracle Health Sciences, talking about our as a guest speaker, as a platinum sponsor. We will then have a break for lunch, and we will come back and we will have two very exciting workshops conducted, one by our Medidata team and the second one by our Viva team. And I'm sure those two workshops will be really engrossing for each one of us and a lot of key takeaways. And before we end the day, yes, how can we not tell you that we had promised you something, which is a recorded session from Bhavesh Acharya, the COO of SiteSpace, talking about his real life experience during this COVID-19 and how the site experience has enabled him to practically incorporate some of the best learnings the way we conduct clinical trials today. So enjoy the day, and I really hope this day is going to be exciting for all of us. And with that, I declare the event open, and Nagalakshmi, all yours to kickstart the first session for the day.
Thank you, Shobit. Hi, everyone. Good morning and good evening to our speakers. Trust you all are healthy and ready for a long but productive day ahead. So as Shobit mentioned, this first segment, we have three keynote speakers. So the aim is that the speaker spends about 30 minutes to present, and we'll take 10 minutes for questions. So as soon as you have a question, please send it through the chat window and we'll select a few. So with this, I'm very happy to get the ball rolling and introduce you to Craig Lipset. We are indeed really fortunate to have him as one of our keynote speakers. So thank you, Craig, for kindly agreeing to be a speaker with us, and that was so late in your evening. So Craig is a recognized leader in the forefront of innovation in clinical research. He is the founder of Clinical Innovation Partners, bringing vision and driving action at the intersection of research, digital solutions, and patient engagement. So Craig was the head of Clinical Innovations and Venture Partners at Pfizer, on the founding operations committee for Translate Biopharma, and the founding management team for two successful startup ventures. He serves on the board of directors of 2 organizations, as well as on the editorial board for therapeutic innovation and regulatory science, and is also an assistant professor at Rutgers University. Craig has been listed among PharmaVoice's most inspiring people in life sciences, Pharmaceutical Executives Emerging Leaders, Center Watch Top 20 Innovators in Clinical Trials, and Ali Watch's Who's Who in Health. I'm sure you all agree that's truly inspirational. Without further ado, let's hear from Craig talk about decentralized trials in the current digital era. So over to you, Craig.
Thank you so much for having me here with you this morning. I hope everybody is safe and well, and it sounds like you've all had your morning coffee and you are ready to get going. I'd like to just start by thanking the organizers with SCDM in India for having me here, and I'm looking forward to helping you start a great day. So let me jump right in. There's a lot of different jargon that we hear out there on this topic: virtual trials, siteless trials, remote trials, digital trials, direct-to-patient trials. But I do think it's important for us to harmonize a bit on our jargon. And I'll tell you why I've landed on decentralized trials. I've landed on it because the FDA landed on it. And who am I to argue? The FDA certainly made their preference clear through CITI, the Clinical Trials Transformation Initiative, when they chose the term decentralized trials for that setting. I think the reluctance, the hesitance in particular around some of the other terms, virtual trials, really to the regulators refers to modeling and simulation-based approaches for your trial, less so the spirit of what we're looking for here. And siteless didn't really resonate with the regulators because they looked at siteless as implying there's no investigator, and there certainly is. So for this presentation, I'm going to focus on referring to these as decentralized. And during the remainder of our time together, I'm going to hit on 3 different themes. First, we'll share what I'd like to call the brief history of decentralized trials. Second, I'd like to jump a little bit past COVID and a little more towards what I expect to see happening this summer in terms of organizations committing to this new way of business. And then finally, I'd like to conclude with a little bit of a forecast about what the future looks like. Now, I apologize. It looks like my camera is jumping around doing all sorts of wonky things. I'm not sure why, but I'm not going to worry about it because I want to make sure we get into the good stuff here. Now, some of you may have seen this timeline. It's something I shared this week on LinkedIn. I shared it on LinkedIn because I updated it for this conference and just wanted to make sure that it wasn't too busy a slide. But considering it wound up being viewed 27,000 times since Monday, I'm going to take that as a good sign that the content seemed to be pretty relevant. The reason I share this slide is there are some, and probably not many on this call, but there are many of your peers who may think the idea of decentralized trials is new. And because it's new, they may think that it's scary and unfamiliar. And that's the reason I emphasize that there is a long history around decentralized trials. It actually dates back to 2003 when a paper was published by McAlendon at Boston University looking at the feasibility of an internet-based trial. And then in 2004, when that trial in glucosamine for osteoarthritis got kicked off. Also in 2004, Lilly had what I would consider the first hybrid trial with a drug under an FDA IND that was with tadalafil. Now, I put at the top of this slide the cell phone that was most prevalent, the leading cell phone during that time period. So just to benchmark what type of technology was being used then, well, I know flip phones are getting back in style again, but this was the time period of the flip phone. In 2005 at UCSF, a second decentralized trial was launched with a nutritional supplement. This was looking at kava for anxiety and insomnia. And then ultimately in 2006, not too much, but in 2007, there seemed to be a little more activity. 2007 is the year of the iPhone. iPhone 1 came out. It's also a year that a patent was filed in the U.S. by McAllen at Boston University for what he called trials over the internet. But 2007 was also the year that we first pitched the Pfizer remote trial. And I thought I would just take a moment and reflect on what that pitch looked like. Because even though this was 13 years ago, we still made sure that we were harnessing patient insights in terms of the decision making that we were using at the time. And some of those insights painted a very strong picture around the factors influencing decisions to participate in terms of both convenience and location. And we were seeing this in multiple signals at that time. This other graphic on the right really brought home to me at the time that there were multiple factors, of course, that influence a patient's potential to participate in a trial. And there are a lot of factors that we just can't control in development. Factors around concerns regarding the safety of the molecule, for example. But access, convenience, proximity to the site, these are factors that we can control. And a lot of that is what we used at the time to kick off what I would call the pitch. And the pitch at the time was what I called a patient-centered clinical trial. And I know patient-centered is now 13 years later kind of prevalent jargon in all corners. So keep in mind this was the year of the iPhone 1. So we'll date this slide a bit. But the idea at the time was quite simple, and it resonates very much with what we're all going through today. Instead of having the investigator site at the center of the trial, where all activities revolve around the site, we shift that hub, that center, to the home. And we enable the use of existing technologies at the time, but simply combine them in a way, string them together to enable patients to participate from home. And I think that was what was very important to us at the time, all the way back in 2007. Nothing new had to be invented for us to be able to make this location shift. We were using off-the-shelf tools that we were already familiar with, like eCOA. We needed to maybe shift a little bit around consent, and that was new for us. But most of the other approaches were not exactly new. All right, let's jump back into the rest of this timeline. So after that initial pitch, we needed a partner to help us to put these pieces together. This is back in 2009. There really weren't partners available for us. And so a team out of UCSF together with Pfizer helped to spin up a company called Mitris, which was really the first player in this space at the time. And working together, we were then able to go live with this idea of the first fully remote, fully decentralized trial. This was using Detrol for overactive bladder under an FDA IND. And we deliberately started enrollment in only 10 states in the U.S. The main things I wanted to call out were we did ultimately launch the Pfizer remote trial. That was in the year 2011, so now we're still 9 years in the past. But that trial did get terminated a little over a year later. We were able to successfully string together the necessary pieces to execute the study, but we failed in terms of enrollment. We screened several thousand. Sorry, I'm getting now a pop-up about joining the audio. I cannot seem to make that go away.
You can just select listen only.
Okay, hopefully you can still hear me, Eric. Okay, so we did publish those results in 2014, and the rest of the slide that I want to call out is really to emphasize the different stakeholders that then started to enter this field. And that's really where I want to take the rest of this particular slide. Science 37 is a company that many know in this field. They were launched in 2014. And very early on, you noticed some large pharma companies starting to play the role of investor in this field, even before they were starting to experiment and adopt. Meanwhile, Sanofi was actually one of the next large pharma companies to go live with a fully digital, fully remote trial, although this was not for a new drug, this was for a digital glucose monitor. Science 37 brought to life their first study with AOBiome, which was a phase 2b study the next year in 2016. But then meanwhile, Mitris launched a very large effort with PCORI, which is the organization in the U.S. that runs comparative effectiveness studies. This was a large comparative effectiveness study for aspirin, 20,000 patients in a decentralized trial. GSK entered the space by starting to work with Apple's Research Kit and an open framework available for organizations to develop their own apps and tools to support research, and this was using highly decentralized approaches in rheumatoid arthritis. And Science 37 launched another round of fundraising, again, including large pharma companies now as investors, including Sanofi. The next year in 2017, we saw some of the first M&A activity in the space with Medidata acquiring Mitris, as well as Science 37's investor base expanding, a third pharma company, Amgen, as well as now the entrance of some large technology companies into the space from Silicon Valley, with Google, again, playing the role as an investor. In 2018, we saw a little more signals around this starting to feel like it could go mainstream. This is the year that Novartis announced another 10 studies with Science 37. IQVIA launched their virtual trial solutions. But we also saw two important multi-stakeholder initiatives. Earlier, the Clinical Trials Transformation Initiative, CITI, which is a public-private partnership with the FDA run out of Duke University, CITI announced their mobile trials program, which included a work stream focused on decentralized trials. The reason this is important is that while CITI is a multi-stakeholder initiative with pharma and others, this work stream was launched by the FDA, sending a very important signal about they're looking to press industry to get more active in this area. We also saw IMI, the Innovative Medicines Initiative in Europe, launch their Trials at Home initiative that year. I'll just move quickly through last year then. More pharma announcements in the space. The Google Life Sciences division, Verily, launched their study platform with partnerships with 4 different large pharma companies, including efforts around decentralized trials. And as I'm sure we'll hear about in a few moments, J&J and PRA announced a very important study that would be one of the earliest registration trials using a fully decentralized, fully remote approach. And once again, Science 37 demonstrating the range of roles for investors, now adding a CRO as an investor in the field. Right up until COVID, investors continued to be very active in this space. Lightship went public with a Series B that included McKesson, which in the U.S. is a very interesting player involved in the drug supply chain, a very large logistics provider in that space. Now, one thing that I think is important when we see organizations considering decentralized trials is to think about the purpose. There really are 2 primary reasons why organizations had been considering decentralization. One is around our ability to improve participant access and experience. Barriers to access to a site are important in terms of holding patients back from participating, in particular, underserved and underrepresented patients from participating. Others look to the space as a potential opportunity to reduce their direct costs. I think it's important for organizations to be honest with themselves around their priority. One could say you could achieve both. I would say you can improve access and experience and maybe get some indirect cost savings. Indirect meaning we can improve retention or recruitment rates. But it's hard to do both. And I think that knowing where your priority is will drive some of the decisions that you make around how you execute, what your tactics look like. Now, I'm going to come into a section here that I'm calling the Summer of Commitment. As I think Kent will speak about in a few moments, I believe we have been going through a period in history that I will call the Spring of Continuity. This has been the period that, with the pandemic striking, organizations have scrambled and adapted to new approaches at a very rapid pace, including the use of decentralized methods to sustain and maintain their portfolio. And we see this has been taking place on a global basis. This isn't just a North American phenomenon, but something that's taking place around the world. I like to emphasize to folks, sometimes people will ask me, isn't it amazing how people in the industry, clinical operations and other professionals have suddenly become so innovative? These are the same people that they were 5 months ago. We have not changed as an industry. Our phenotype has not changed as an industry. We are inherently a risk-averse industry. Change only happened because the environment shifted. The risk-benefit equation shifted. What was viewed as risk 4 months ago is now viewed as risk mitigation. And that's okay, because these countermeasures are risk mitigation today, and they will be through the rest of this pandemic. And this pandemic is clearly not going away in a week, in a month, in a quarter. This is going to be with us, so that if anyone has a new study they're planning in 2020 and 2021, these are your risk mitigation measures today. Now, it's always important to try to pause and look at what patients want. And I know that's hard during a pandemic when we're scrambling to try to adapt. But now that we're coming into the summer months, these are the months when organizations are going to be thinking about committing in these areas. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. But what I'd like to call out is we have seen some remarkable feedback around patient interest in considering clinical trials and willingness to participate. We'll see how much that translates into actual participation, but this increased awareness on a global basis around the existence of clinical trials is certainly a great thing for our industry and for our community. But what's equally important is when we look within that data, a significant, in this case, this was a survey done at the end of May by subject. Well, 58% would be more likely to participate in trials that offer telehealth services. And what I find particularly interesting is that signal carries globally. Even in Japan, where Continuum Clinical and a partner looked at Japanese research participants, 60% indicated that they will value alternatives to hospital visits. Now, I think that there are some that may say that this is our new normal, that these changes that have taken place in how we monitor and how we are shifting the location and being less dependent on sites, that is our new normal. I would say it's not our new normal unless we commit to change. As we all know, folks working in this industry for years on this call, things do not just change in our industry because we want them to. They do not just change in our industry because we call it the new normal. There is a process of committing to change that we know and we understand. If anyone's company on this call were going to change their TMF, their trial master file, in the coming year, their chief financial officer would write a big check. You'd probably go off and grab a team from McKinsey who would be fully embedded in your organization. You'd have a half a dozen of your own team fully dedicated to managing this change. There would be a date set for the change to happen, and if it didn't happen on that date, there'd be accountability. That's what commitment to change looks like. We know it. we do it in our organizations. That's the level of commitment that we need to start to see this summer. Policies and procedures within companies need to be relooked at to make sure that we don't have to survive off of SOP deviations going forward. We have to relook at who our partners and vendors are that we're working with, and we have to rethink our training all the way from the clinicians writing our protocols to the CRAs and coordinators in the field. And perhaps most importantly, we have to rethink our endpoints in studies. The fragile endpoints that we rely on for our trials today are going to be the rate limiter to meaningful adoption of decentralized trials. We can't have endpoints like a 6-minute walk test, where a patient is literally walking 45 minutes to get to a clinic and 45 minutes to get back home. But to do all of that, and they've got a cell phone in their pocket the whole time, but they're doing all of that just to be able to be watched for 6 minutes in the clinic walking a 20-meter track. We have to get smarter about our endpoints and start to adapt to digital endpoints that can be more resilient and can be captured with confidence, whether in the clinic or at home. And that's going to open tremendous doors. Now, I'm going to close with some thoughts about what the future looks like. Please drop some questions in the Q&A box, and I want to make sure we're leaving a few minutes for those because I love to hear what you're thinking. I would say that the future looks hybrid, and we certainly see that. This is some survey data that ERT shared, that the majority of folks surveyed in the industry are indicating they will be incorporating some virtual trial elements in their studies, and that's not surprising. When we even look at the shifts in all of our lives, here in the U.S., grocery stores went from only 3 to 4% of grocery store purchasing happening online over to being upwards of 15% during the pandemic. And when the pendulum starts to swing back, people are not going to abandon the grocery store, and they're not going to forget that they enjoyed occasionally shopping through an app. The post-COVID life is hybrid. The pendulum swung hard for all of us into our homes, whether it came to how we got groceries, how our children were getting educated, how we took meetings, how we ourselves obtained healthcare using different telemedicine tools. After the pandemic, we will go back to face-to-face encounters when it's necessary. But in many cases, we've seen the light about the potential of hybrid. Now, very often when I see folks talking about hybrid, they'll often talk about it in this type of way. And they'll say, we have our brick and mortar studies, conventional trials. We have hybrid studies that are sort of some visits in the clinic and some at home, and almost imply that a fully virtual trial is the desired destination. I'm going to argue that that's not our desired destination, because all of these options are still dictating to the patient how they're supposed to be participating. Now, what do I mean by that? Here's a typical table or schedule of events in a protocol. And maybe in a hybrid trial, we say visit 1 is going to be in the clinic and visit 2 is at home, and so on and so forth, dictating in the protocol where each visit will take place. To me, that's like my supermarket telling me that on January, I can go to the supermarket, but in February, I have to have home delivery. In March, I can go back to the supermarket. These are not consumer-friendly ways of operating. We would never accept this as consumers. And why would we accept our patients to desire or accept that going forward when it comes to hybrid trials? Now, I grew up with a series of books that were called Choose Your Own Adventure. My kids grew up with a Netflix show called Bandersnatch. But in both of these environments, these were places that I got to choose what happened next. And to me, that is the future of hybrid trials, centering around the patient. Wherever feasible, the participant should be deciding whether their visit takes place in the clinic, at the home, or elsewhere. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself about all of the reasons why that can't work. And there will be some trials, of course, where that is not going to be feasible. But I believe that as we get more resilient endpoints, more endpoints that can enable location flexibility, we're going to find that these doors open farther and farther. I'm just going to close by noting that the shifts that we made, these innovations that we've introduced over the last 4 months, we did so to accommodate a pandemic. I believe that we can sustain these innovations in order to accommodate the participants in our trials. I'm looking forward to hearing your questions and spending a few more minutes together. Thank you for listening. So let's see, what kinds of questions do we have here on the stream?
Thank you, Craig, for that really interesting presentation. I thought the journey and what we could expect in the future was a really good perspective. So, Craig, you can see some of those questions there. Do you want me to help you pick some, or do you already have you already picked any?
Well, let's see. I'll just go in order here. The first question I see is around decentralized trials. Will there always be risk of data manipulation or data overflow? So questions around confidence in the data that we're acquiring for studies when we're running trials that are decentralized. And that's certainly a very important question, but that's an important question for all of our trials. We have more and more what I would call decentralized methods that we're introducing in our studies every day. I think we might do well to not necessarily think about decentralized trials, because the idea of a whole decentralized trial is overwhelming for a lot of our organizations. And we should think instead about the range of decentralized research methods that we can introduce and have been using for many years. That starts with electronic diaries, and it carries out from there. And in every one of those, we know we need to validate the instruments that we're using so that we can have confidence in the data that's being acquired. That's the case whether it's self-reported data, whether it's sensor-derived data that's being contributed into the study, or other types of video interactions with the investigator.